Here are three reasons why I'm still holding ZBCN. Even though nothing I say is financial advice, the first reason for me is going to be the idea of maybe hypothetical upside. Because the way you take a look at it is that even though there's no guarantees, let's say ZBCN goes to the price of 10 cents in a make believe scenario, that's around a 24x from here. Market cap at that point would be nearly $9 billion. That's a market cap that's not even 10% of XRP's current market cap. And many people would even consider that XRP hasn't even achieved what it could maybe do during this cycle. So then the way you take a look at it is that this doesn't seem that unrealistic to me. However, around a 24x from here at the price of 10 cents, I mean, the way I view it is that when it comes to something like, XRP, could that do, around a 24x in the next 6 to 10 months? Doesn't seem that logical to me. Also, when I take a look at something like, for instance, XLM, which don't get me wrong, I am a fan of both XLM and XRP, but then just because their market caps are just way more massive, it just kind of feels like doing that type of stuff. Yeah, I just don't really know about that in the next 6 to 10 months. More specifically, I'm not saying 10 or 15 years later. Also, not to mention, let's take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum. If Ethereum goes to 10 grand, less than a 3x from here. Bitcoin going to 300 grand, less than a 3x from here. I mean, even if ZBCN just went to the price of 5 cents, that's like still over 10x. So the way you take a look at it is that even though there's no guarantees it will ever do that, but then just maybe the idea of it would have me, just choosing ZBCN in that instance. This is just my perspective. But even besides that point, I'm totally aware that ZBCN, it's not going to be the best performer, in my opinion, in the next 6 to 10 months. I mean, there might be some microcaps out there that does hypothetically way better in terms of percentage price increase. Who knows? But then I don't want to get into a microcap. That's just not my style. But at the same time, I don't want to get into a dinosaur, the way I take a look at it, with a very massive market cap. So something like ZBCN does fit what I'm looking for. It may be different on a case by case basis, but I do believe in ZBCN. I don't only hold ZBCN, but then, I do want to have it as one of my pieces in my portfolio. That's just my mentality. Now, why do I like Zebec fundamentally? And this actually brings me to my second reason as to why I like it. It's because I think the fundamentals are pretty good. Like, for instance, if we take a look at something like Zebec, right? It is a decentralized infrastructure network for real world value flows. And, just to kind of harp on this RWA aspect, right? Real world asset. If we take a look at RWA tokens, they're digital representations of physical assets on the blockchain. They can be used for market sectors such as, like, for instance, or should I say the market sectors could involve like real estate, stocks. We take a look at, bonds. We take a look at, for instance, something like art. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities, but I'm just naming a few there. And again, we see some projects out there like Ondo, for instance, which is focused on RWAs. We've seen historically how well that did. So I think this is a pretty good addition. Zebec is also focused on AI-based PayFi, so basically AI-based payment finance. The payments market currently valued at over $2 trillion. The global trade and finance market predicted to reach up to $5 trillion in value by 2028, according to Mordor Intelligence. And the AI market is predicted to reach nearly $2 trillion by 2030, according to Grandview Research. So I don't think that's such a bad thing for Zebec to be focused on. Zebec is also focused on payrolls, right? Which is, I think, a pretty good touch. We take a look at also, it's focused on the Zebec cards, which not too long ago, we saw what happened in regards to Algorand when it comes to that. I even talked about it, not to mention, when we take a look at the Zebec cards and as well as historically speaking, something like Bonk, right? Bonk is a Solana-based meme coin, which is pretty popular. So I think that's pretty cool as well. Not to mention, Zebec cards, they support multiple blockchains. Like, for instance, Ethereum, we take a look at, something like Base, which is Coinbase's layer 2, which I find very fascinating. Not to mention, we take a look at something like Binance Smart Chain, Solana. So again, it's pretty cool. The Zebec cards are also powered by MasterCard, so I think that's a pretty unique touch as well. Zebec, not to mention, we take a look at how, historical partnerships do include something like, for instance, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Visa, MasterCard, and some others. So I find that very interesting as well. Not to mention, if we take a look at something like Zebec, right? They're part of the Circle Alliance. Now, Circle is the creator of USDC, the stablecoin. But then the cool thing, in my opinion, is that when it comes to Circle, or should I say something I find very fascinating, is that it's actually one of the backers when it comes to Zebec, one of the early backers, I should say. And they allegedly hold a pretty big amount of ZBCN. So I find that very interesting, especially considering how Circle is publicly listed. So again, that's pretty cool, very interesting. Not to mention Solana Ventures is one of the backers as well when it comes to Zebec. And it kind of makes a little bit of sense because ZBCN not too long ago was top 10 in terms of utility when it comes to Solana, so I find that very interesting as well. So fundamentally, I must say I'm a fan of Zebec, and I don't think it's bad fundamentally. That's just the way I take a look at it. Now, this brings me to my third and final reason, which is the way I take a look at it is that if we do ever see a fully fledged type of altcoin season this cycle, it may not seem that far away in my mind, if let's say it ever even does, because historically speaking, usually altcoins, as a worst case scenario, they typically peak around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event. So the last one, which happened in April of 2024, so that's last year, we add 18 months on top of that, basically a year and a half. That's October this year. Now, we're not in October yet, I get that. But the way I take a look at it is that with the way I see things are heading, right? Like, for instance, the hype about the Bitcoin ETF, the Ethereum ETF, which, don't get me wrong, I don't want to believe in Bitcoin and Ethereum. However, it can be denied that the ETF is, of course, hypothetically a good thing for this space overall. Not to mention, over 600 million crypto owners, according to Crypto.com research. I mean, that's a big amount. In the peak of the 2021 bull run, around 300 million crypto owners. So now we basically have double. There is more competition when it comes to the space overall. But if I take a look at Zebec, it doesn't have that many direct competitors, in my opinion. Sure, we take a look at something like Ripple and Stellar, but the Zebec is never overtaking that. So let's take a look at the other projects within its sector that are focused on the same markets, right? Basically, like payments, global trade, and finance. We'll see something like XCN, aka Onyx Coin. We'll see something like XDC. We'll see something like Swift Coin, and we'll see XPR. That is pretty much four, right, major competitors when it comes to Zebec. How is that much? That's not even that many. It's not like I mentioned 10, 20, or 30. Like some other markets out there, like NFTs, blockchain gaming, there's so many competitors. I mean, something has to be very, very special to stand out. This one, even though I'm not saying that Zebec is not special or something like that, I do still find it fascinating to me, but then the competitors are not that much. So it's in this kind of unique position, in my opinion. Now, why does it not have that many competitors? Like some people may be wondering. Now, of course, I'm not a part of these projects, so I don't know the exact reason, but then I can at least assume a little bit. Like, for instance, my assumption is that because of the Ripple and SEC, situation that was going on for quite a while, I think because that kind of dragged on for quite some time and also the reputation that had for this space, I think many developers probably thought, like, you know what? Why even bother with this space? There's too much drama and everything. I think they probably just said, okay, instead of making a project that's focused on global trade finance or the payments market, why not just go to AI or like, NFTs, blockchain gaming, decentralized finance, where there isn't like this reputation, right? At least at that time. Now, because of the, situation, basically, like people don't really care about it anymore and whatnot, right? And also, hopefully, now that the case is gone forever, hopefully, now people don't have this kind of reputation for it. But then the thing is, because of those times, there wasn't that many competitors. So that's actually kind of a good thing at the end, I think, for these type of projects. So I find it very fascinating. I like Zebec's fundamentals. Hypothetical upside doesn't seem too bad to me when it comes to ZBCN. Also, if we do ever see a fully fledged type of altcoin season, maybe it doesn't seem that far away, to me at least, based off history. So those are three reasons why I'm still holding ZBCN. I'm going to still stay patient, dollar cost averaging, holding and just waiting, and that's pretty much it. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I would greatly appreciate it. It's Pony the Captain, and I'll catch you all in the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.